right, welcome in, folks. Today we have a very storied conversation we're going to be getting into. I got John Payne. He's the chairman of the Tacoma County Fire Board, been a career chief, volunteer chief, industrial chief, instructor. I mean, been to the National Fire Academy quite a few times, EFO graduate, one of the first in the state. Done a lot.
Yes, been a good career.
Yeah. That's all you're going to say about it. This has been a good career.
It's been a good career.
You've been very blessed.
I truly have, due to things that sometimes are out of our control. We end up on a different path, and that's what happened to me in several different incidents. Uh, Things that you don't think are going to affect you, and next thing you know, you're doing something else. And I've always tried to be part of to give service. I'm a very Christian-based person. Jesus said to be a servant, and I tried really hard to do that through fire and EMS and education as well. Blessed to have been an instructor for the Fire Academy for a couple of years. Uh, During that time, uh, I graduated from college at 52 years of age.
Another one on the
But it
belt.
was one of those deals that you didn't realize when you were there that you were happening and things that were going on. Uh, some of the classes all the classes I had taken when I was in college the first time in 1972 through 4 were applied to the classes that I had taken through the Fire Academy. And a lot of people don't realize that Fire Academy classes all have college hours attached to them. And I was able to utilize those to formalize my education there, and then was hired as a fire marshal for the city of Maumelle. And while I was there, Chief Glenn was a very high proponent of the National Fire Academy and Executive Fire Officer program, him being an EFO himself. And I applied to that. And basically, the EFO is a 4 year, at that time, 4, now it's 2. They've shrunk it just a little bit, master's degree program. It's the fire department, fire industry's master's degree. And so I was able to obtain that. And in doing that, opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, like recommending to you to go to the National Fire
Mhm.
Academies and understand the context of the people that you get there are so valuable. So much stuff is standardized across the country that we don't realize. But if you don't have the networks out there to utilize that and get that information, then you have to reinvent the wheel. And it's the same thing on the EMS, and the same thing when we're talking about mental health, which is our bulwark of this conversation, is the fact is you don't know the resources and you don't know how to reach out, then you have a tendency to flounder, and floundering is not good.
No. So, with all that training, all that experience that you've put in, one of the things that I'm noticing and we're working on here in our county, but there's not a class or a major focus over your career for mental health, right?
Correct.
Yeah, there's just been not necessarily a misstep or a forethought that was just overlooked, but just wasn't understood like it is now.
Yeah, it's correct. About 10 years ago, I think a lot of people started going, "Wait a minute, there is a problem." And even the Arkansas EMT Association had a whole
Mhm.
conference dedicated towards mental health, realizing that what we see and what we do is not normal.
Who would have
We,
thought?
we, we and I'll even go that side, my police side of it. All of those, we see people in their absolute worst moments, and we have to mentally take that in, take our training, apply that to correct that situation. And then once we go, they're gone, then we have to mentally decompress from that situation. I can remember years ago when I first got into an EMT and worked for MedTech a little bit, I'd be on scene as a firefighter and I'd go, man, hope you just get the ambulance here, just get that ambulance here, just get that. Well, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was praying just to get the ambulance there. I wasn't praying to take care of this patient. I just wanted out. I just wanted them out of my hands. I wanted somebody else to help me with this. And realistically, that's the way we did a lot of stuff. We'd hand off stuff, or we thought we were handing stuff off.
Mhm.
But what we didn't realize is that when we handed that patient off, now we had to deal with everything else that was
Yeah.
involved, whether it was a car accident or a medical emergency, or it was a fire that had additional people hurt or injured or deceased. And having to hand those off were very, very difficult.
In that time frame, because you started back whenever we still had the, the quote unquote nuclear family, and
Mhm.
kitchen table conversations were a lot more common, even in the fire service. When you were watching that shift of what we have now, of this mainstream, fast paced society, did you see that shift in the conversations and then the people's way of handling it, or was it just something we've always kind of ignored?
Realistically, my dad was a World War II vet, and I don't know if they didn't realize it
Hmm.
or they didn't know how to deal with it. But you just was one of them types of all of those guys, and they passed that down to my generation. Was just suck it up and get it on, boy. You know, and I think they didn't realize it, and there was problems back then, but everybody just said, that's just the way it is. And now then, we've looked into it a little deeper, and we realize that there are ways to help people to deal with problems instead of just letting them on their own deal with them. And and I was the first few incidences that I was involved in were that way. I just had to handle it myself pretty well. And then sometimes, if you're lucky, I had a wife who intervened, and that was when I was in industry. Had a worked an incident. The gentleman later that did pass away, but I didn't realize it. I knew the individual. I knew that he had small children the same age mine, which is always a more difficult
Yeah.
situation because you relate to it. And by I didn't, like I said, I didn't realize about 6 months into it, my wife said, "You need to go fishing." Now, gentlemen, if your wife is telling you to go fishing, you know something is up. And it was me that was up. But she said that ever since that incident had happened, that I had hovered anytime I wasn't at work in
Hmm.
industry, then I was around. I wouldn't leave. I didn't go anyplace. I just kind of was right there with family all the time, that nucleus that we were talking
Yeah.
about. And she realized that I needed something else.
Hmm.
And before that, I had been doing a little bit of local bass tournament fishing and stuff like that. Well, I just kind of quit all that.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, it was like, okay, I can go back to being a normal life, I guess
Hmm.
would be the way to say it. But it was her that opened my eyes.
Yeah.
Said, "You need to go fishing." At the first, when she said that, I really wasn't sure what she was talking about, and then she led into that I hovered all the time. I was
Hmm.
not leaving. I wouldn't leave so
So quite a bit of trust between that relationship there for her to be able to call you out and tell you, "Hey,
oh, yeah.
there's a little bit of difference here."
Yeah, 52 years in now and only
Yeah.
dated for 3 years. I gave her 3 years to run me off.
Well, she didn't succeed.
I told her the other day, I said, "You realize I was the best you could find." That's the kind of relationship we have. We tell
Yeah.
each other stuff, and we work back and forth, and we work through problems, and that base right there helps a whole lot too. Having someone that will tell you the truth and someone who will help steer you in the right direction to help you mentally and physically also.
So when you were kind of throughout your career, because you guys have had it's a long relationship, 52 years.
Yeah,
Congrats on that.
yeah.
That's not what we see nowadays. How much did you rely on, some of that? We talk about unloading and having that person that you talk to. How much of that was your wife that you actually utilized versus other peers or colleagues out there?
Probably mostly her, realistically. We at the time I was working shift work, and as anybody knows, if you work shift work, your life is not normal compared to everybody else's. So we mostly spent our time with family, and it's just as our family grew, it's just like one day when I realized that the third child was coming, we said, all right, it's time for a van. And so instead of asking for people to keep your kids while you go out and do the stuff that you wanted to do when you were young, we threw all the kids in the vehicle and away we went.
Yeah.
And so your life does change, it does evolve, and things come about that makes it easier. And then just like moving in, my son's an EMT and a firefighter here in our
Hmm.
own county, and he saw what I did and everything like that and liked it enough that at one time he was wanting to do it on a full-time basis. Back then they didn't hire till like 21, and his mother said, "Well, you can do that, but you're going to go to college while you're waiting to get 21." And that turned into a really good career, so he did what I had done. um, he ended up volunteering.
How does that feel knowing that you've not just impacted the community, Especially when we talk about balancing mental health and, the review of your career and those moments that stick with you, knowing not only did you do with the fire marshal stuff, the impact you've made in the community, but you've had family that's now making that impact and carrying on that legacy. How does that feel?
It's tremendous. One of the things that I realized early on is I didn't have, and that was part of the problem reason I didn't go into fire service earlier, was I didn't have anybody to tell me how to do it. And so I've made it a goal to try to show people and to educate people about some things as minor as how to fill out an application. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that fire departments only hire once a year. And so you've got to be there when it comes time to put in your application and take your physical and do all that sort of stuff. And without someone to tell them, they don't know that. That's been my goal all along, is to try to help them educate, just like we were talking about a while ago about the National Fire Academy. Every meeting that I go to for a long period of time there, when I was, gosh, at one time I was on the board at the AMT, Arkansas Association. I was on the board at the Arkansas Fire Marshals, and I was on the board at the Arkansas Fire Chiefs Association.
Mhm.
And in those, I would go to them because the Fire Chiefs Association had both volunteer chiefs and paid chiefs. And I would, nearly every meeting during some part of it, I would tell them about the National Fire Academy and how they could go and how it was free. And, like, what? But again, if we don't have people out there that are telling us and helping us and pointing us in the right direction, we don't know where to go to do things. Same thing is what we're talking about now about mental health. You need people who will help push you in the right direction and show you the right way. They can't make the decision for you,
Mhm.
but that education helps you because now all of a sudden you have more resources, and I like to call it the toolbox. You have tools in your toolbox that you can pull out when you need them. You don't always use them, but you can always pull them out and when you need them.
Mhm.
Just just like recently when we had fires in our own county recently that we had fatalities. That's a tool that you didn't need you know you needed to use at that time.
Yeah.
you know, and now all of a sudden we've got 20 responders on scene there, firefighters, police, and EMS that are having to deal with child deaths in a fire, and
Mhm.
that is one of the hardest ones that you will get. And somewhere along the line, you also need that one person or an older guy that been there and done that type guy that you can go to and say, "How do you handle this?" or "How do you do this?" or and then they can help you themselves and with resources. And it helps to realize other people have been through the same thing that you're going through.
Yeah. It does. It helps benefit. I mean, most people don't realize I probably talk to you 3 times a week. It's probably a
Yeah,
good
probably.
average.
I think my
But
wife probably has a more accurate count.
I'm sure she does. But you've been there, you've experienced it. So when we get in a bind, especially when we talk about the growth of the service here in our community and attach it to the picture at large within the state and the nation, because
Yeah,
as a firefighter, everything we do, we represent the fire service.
correct.
Yes, your agency is the first thing people think about, but they also think about the fire service. And that has been a huge driving factor behind this podcast is we have all these associations, we go to all these meetings outside of inside our agencies, us putting and trying to get some tools in the toolbox for the firefighters, there's no conglomerate that's not some, 501(c)(3) organization or one of those really standing anything up to try to help. And a lot of those, they have their issues. We'll leave it at that. We're starting to see some siloing and some negative things on individuals that are putting some of these up and starting with the right picture, but kind of steering off in the wrong direction on some points. So it's really interesting because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm still new to the associations, but you don't really see a huge driving factor if it's a repeat thing like it should be on an agenda status for us to, what's everyone doing? Like, what are we doing at the state level to help? Because right now, it's all on the individual agency to get an EAP to fund it. There's no real driving thing like we're doing with, you know, we're pushing for Act 833 money growth, right? We use that as a perfect example to buy more equipment. Well, you can't use that to pay for your guys to stay mentally sharp and
Hmm.
resilient to be able to fight fire,
Correct.
right? So
Right.
because you've been doing this quite a long time, why do you think we still aren't to the point on that side of the fence that people are willing to do it on that drive as leaders? what's holding us back from doing that? I understand that the needs are there for equipment and personnel and everything else, but a huge thing with personnel is if we can make them more resilient, maybe we'll get better retention. Maybe they won't leave us to go to the neighbor who's paying $3,000 more because we're giving them more tools in the toolbox to have a happier and healthier career.
Right.
Um,
I do understand that. We don't do that because it's one of those things. You find the heads of your organizations, and this is one of the things that I told you, and I've told a lot of other ones like that. When and for those that don't know, the fifth bugle is the chief of department, and I've always said that when you pin on the fifth bugle, you
mhm.
become a politician.
Yep.
So what we have to do then is our time is not as much firefighting as supplying what firefighters need. And we spend so much time lobbying for funds and everything else, whether it's the city council, or the county government, or it's on state level. We spend so much time lobbying for funds to keep, um, this prices of fire engines have doubled in the last few years. And now you're talking about nearly $1 million for an engine. Most volunteer fire departments are out, you know,
Mhm.
and, so you're lobbying, you're spending your time trying to get that, and the last thing that not maybe the right thing, but the last thing that we think about is our firefighters' mental health. We wanna get them trained, we wanna get them up to speed, we wanna make sure they've got all the equipment that they need, we wanna put them on a decent apparatus that we know is safe, but, after that, we kinda just let it go, and I think that's probably one of the things that we haven't had a driving force that said, "Hey, let's go lobby for this, or let's go do that," and, I think that probably is part of it. That's the last thing on the list that we think about because, as we said a while ago, it is not something that happens on a daily basis. Now, can it build up where it affects that person on a daily basis? Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's the part that, you know, as I'm going through my own counseling and getting myself, to that next new normal and bettering myself, I'm starting to really put some more time into some more unique podcasts. And I think that's really where it's, as leaders, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, it's a little hot take here. We're not realizing that it is every day though, because every day they're stressed and having to prep and be ready
Right,
for that what if.
right,
We might be getting toned to a lift assist, but how many times when that radio hits are you thinking about that one call that stuck with you?
right.
And that sticks with you forever. You can go through all the counts in the world, but you're always gonna have those highlight reel moments.
That's correct. I can one particular traumatic incident should give me a piece of paper, I could probably draw the blood spatter on the side of the ambulance. Still in my mind.
How many years ago was that? Roughly, you don't have to give specifics.
Woo. 40, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah.
It stuck with you for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's for there forever. Now the trick is getting past that and then getting into a situation where you have other things that are on your mind a lot more than that, like family and doing
Mhm.
things like that, and hobbies and stuff like that. Decompressing with hobbies and stuff like that is a tremendous part of it. Uh, and that makes it better when you find another outlet for your talent that's not job related or is you know and then two, part of it is I handling difficult situations like that. I've seen a lot of guys after, and this is a very small thumbnail of a little bit of counseling that I've given. But
Mhm.
on the scene, I will tell them you need to understand we did everything we possibly could to make the outcome good. Now
Mhm.
it's up to God to take care of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Our decision is not there. We've done everything. We've been given skills, we've been given training, we've given equipment, we've done everything possible to make the outcome as good as it possibly could, but we don't get to choose the outcome. And once you get that mentally in your head, you go, okay, I did everything I can do. Why am I carrying this baggage when it's not
Yeah.
there?
We're not in control of the final outcome of nobody's story. And that is the hardest thing when I was a paramedic that I had to come to grips with very early on was my first couple calls were pretty crappy. Put it that way.
Yeah.
I can still remember the face of the lady as I'm sedating her so I can intubate her. Very first call as a paramedic on my own. And it was the hardest realization, even as somebody that's God fearing person myself, to be like, he wrote the story for me to impact this life, but he did not tell me how the impact was going to work out.
Yeah.
And that is a tough one, which is kind of why as I'm talking to other leaders and, looking at how I can make our agency better, when I look at what we talk about and how we build such a foundation for these guys to be able to, even as a volunteer, to be such a professional and be so well trained to go from eating dinner with their family or sleeping for their normal job the next day, pack up, get on the scene, and dump into a window to go save a life. How can we build that level of muscle memory into the mental health side of it? And I think it's because we don't put it at the very first. The first things we do for firefighters, EMTs, is we teach it to them as a core essential before they can do anything else. They have to have this certain bread and butter things into them. And I think if we add that bread and butter in, we wouldn't need to then after the call have that same conversation. Maybe a reminder, no different than we have a reminder, hey, it's a little easier when you're forcing that door if you use this or use this technique, refresh that piece. But
Yeah.
if it was more of a foundation and not as a attachment on the backside. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
As
it
somebody who
does.
was an instructor.
It does. It does. Yeah. Muscle memory and competency of you in your own abilities to know what you're doing helps. And then, like I said, once there's that avenue there that once you've done all you can do, you have done all
Mhm,
you can do. And now it's not in your hands, it's in God's hands to take care of the outcome.
mhm.
Uh, and I alluded to that a while ago. Used to, I just wanted to, where's that ambulance at? I was
Yeah.
ready to hand it to that paramedic so you can take it.
Been there.
Yeah. When you get to the hospital, I hope a good ER doc's there. I'll get to the.
Where's the next adult?
Yeah, it is. We want to hand it off, but we still have what happened on scene, what we did, and then sometimes there are just limited things that even limits our ability to do what we need to do. And when he's talking about going to classes and stuff, Dr. Ben Pepe, who was a Ben Tile Trauma Center in Texas, was telling his story one time, and he said paramedics were just starting out, and he said, I told him, I said, I want to know what they're doing out there. So he said, they gave me a car and had lights and everything. He said, even gave me a jump kit so I'd have my own kit.
Hmm.
And he said, I found one thing, and this is one of those tools that you put in your box, is do not be the first one on scene if you're not at a bar shooting. He said, so I bailed in there going to do the great thing, and he said, I found me a patient right there close to the door. And he said, I bent down and started working on it. And he said, the guy at the bar with the gun said, hey, I meant to shoot that one. Come over here and work on this one who got in the way. So that's what you call a Texas triage. And the guy with the gun does the triage. Whether he could have saved the first guy or not, I don't know. Whether he could have saved the second guy, I don't know. But we get ourselves into situations, and just like that, here was a doctor trying to do the right thing, getting his scene really quick, want to help out. And
Mhm.
next thing you know, his life is in danger too. Let me tell you something. That life in danger mentally sticks with you just as much as the other stuff when
Yep.
you're doing your skills and stuff like that. Because, the reason he was telling that story to all of us is because he was saying, this was a traumatic experience for me. Spending 8 years as the uh, medical officer on a high risk warrant service team during the height of methamphetamine manufacturing in our local area.
Yeah.
I was on a lot of those, and some of those traumatics are there. One of the guys that I worked with in the industry um, just happened to be, I had to give him medical aid on that because during the arrest, he was injured.
Mm.
And that's a nice thing right there. You can walk in the door and
Mhm.
are you? Okay. You do your skills and you go, whoa, this is going to be fun tomorrow at work. So, and that's another deal. That was a trauma I had to think about. What's going to happen when I get to work
Mhm.
with my paid job? And so there's stuff like that sets in your mind for a period of time, and then learning to be able to deal with that. And then again, I wasn't the one that was doing the manufacturing of drugs. I wasn't the one getting arrested. Why am I sweating this? But yeah, there's a lot of things that are mentally in the background that run there. I kind of like to look at it like a computer. You'll do a search, and while it's doing it, now I'm talking about old computers, much ones. New ones are much faster. While it was doing the search looking for what you're doing stuff in the foreground. And
Mhm.
this thing is all of a sudden it comes up with the answer and hands it to you, and you go, well, we got a lot of stuff that's running in the background,
Yeah.
a lot of it. And some of it becomes accumulative.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to work into it. You'll hear, and probably paramedics more than anybody, you'll hear, I'm just done. And they just walk away from what was their good career that they love so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's something that you've done with such a long career? You know, I know some people will say, "Well, that's why you shifted," but there's you've had a lot of opportunities, so the shifts weren't because you needed a change; they were just better opportunities came along. What's something you've done to make sure that when things started accumulating, they didn't come to that boiling point where they topped over, and your cup was just exploding, and you know that nastier side of managing all this?
I probably turned to my faith as much as anything, and then family, and then getting out and doing. I bow hunted for 42 years before my shoulder got where I couldn't draw anymore, and it sounds really strange in a way, but if you start thinking about it, someone is just getting out and sitting in a tree
Mhm.
where nothing's connected to anything,
Yep.
especially pre-cell phone. Turn it off, get in the tree, you'll be all right. They'll get it later. Uh, And, you're sitting there and doing stuff like, wow, check out that squirrel. Wow, what a jump. And next thing you know, your mind is just not digging into the deep stuff. It's just enjoying the sun coming up and the light breeze and
Mhm.
that sort of stuff. But yeah, channeling yourself into other areas that help takes away from those stresses. I mean, we've all seen the guy, the whole turn, the trauma junkie. And
Mhm.
even on his off day, comes up and sits with the guys in the bay, and you're going. And once every now and then, okay, I'm in town. I drop by, see you. Hadn't seen Darren in a while. I'll go by and see him. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. When he's there every shift that he's not on or something like that, he is trying to find an escape.
Yeah.
And that's, but now, how do you tell him that or her?
Mhm.
It really, it makes a difference. You We all have our outlets, but somewhere along the line, you have to blow the steam off a little bit.
Yeah.
If that, I'll do this. If a pressure vessel can't release the pressure every now and then, it will blow up,
Yeah.
and that's what happens.
And you gotta be able to release the right way too, though,
Absolutely.
because 'Cause we've all seen what happens whenever you do some of the
Yeah,
other stuff.
yeah,
Ain't nothing worse than having to pick up the phone and call ahead, get bail money set up.
yeah,
How many of those you've seen in your career or been called for? Thankfully, I have not had that phone call yet,
yeah. Very good.
but that's part of the reason I'm here is trying to avoid that phone call
There you go.
from ever having to happen.
There you go.
So, some things that most people don't realize is you've had the honor to go up to National Fire Academy during the Fallen Firefighter.
Yes, I've been a family escort.
So talk about that a little bit, because that is a very huge blessing to have that honor, but
Absolutely.
it's also a lot for someone to take and do and manage through and when you're already dealing with your own stuff
Yeah.
from your own accumulations.
Well, it's just like they just this last weekend was the memorial. And because of COVID, they didn't get to have the 97 families there last year. I believe it was last year. They couldn't have it last year. We were concerned because of the federal shutdown. National Fire Academy just opened up, and the memorial's on the grounds there at Emmitsburg, that they were not going to be able to have it again this year.
Mhm.
So they were actually had 200 families this year there.
Ooh.
Yeah, 200 and some odd, but I'm not the exact number like that. But still, and a lot of people, and people don't realize this, but it was on our own expense we went up there.
I didn't know that part.
Yes, all of the people that are there are on just free gratis. They're going on their own. They're paying their way. We paid for our own hotels on the way up there. And like the academy does give us free room once you get there, but the families are put up due to there's fundraising efforts that they have. They sell a lot of merchandise and stuff, and they raise the money and they put the families up in hotels. But you can imagine a couple of days with hotels for 200 families is a
That's
bunch.
ooh, especially up there.
Yes, especially up there. Um, But yeah, Chief Ezel was the chief at was selected for the chief at Maumelle, and in our talking and discussions found out that he had been a escort pretty well on an annual basis, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing it. And I said absolutely. You know,
Mhm.
so in 2019, I was one of the family escorts, and the firefighter who's we were escorting his family was out of Friendship, Oklahoma, and things that come in that you don't think about. Again, this is looking for closure, and the family are there for their last final honor of that fallen firefighter and the sacrifice they made for their communities and their state and their nation. And you don't think about certain things. It's just like this lady had her daughter and her son-in-law there, and her brother-in-law. Her brother-in-law was the chief of department that this happened at.
Mhm.
Okay. The son was part of the interior crew that lost her husband. Both of them had stepped out onto the front porch, and the son in law stepped off of it, and the front porch collapsed onto the firefighter, killing him. So now he's having to deal with remorse of, why wasn't I a part of that? So there's things that continue to come out and things that happen. They have a night ceremony where they take the white paper bags and make luminaries, and they get to decorate those with something from their stuff, whether they write on them or whether they use stickers or what. They have all kinds of stuff like that. And then they're lit, and after they're over, it's up to the escort to go retrieve their family's luminary and
Mhm.
take it to the family as a memento. A lot of them don't know it at the time. I was a flag presenter, so I was the one that got on a knee and handed it to a grieving widow. Underneath the flag, and they don't realize it when you hand it to them, is a special commemorative badge that has their name and the year of service for the National Memorial. And that's pretty awesome. But to give you an idea about how many people come up there and make this thing happen, just the bagpipes is over 200 pipers. And it is truly thundering awesome to hear that. And I don't even know the amount of drummers, but they have the drummers too. The family's buses are escorted by firefighters on motorcycles. They have a special organization called the Red Helmets, and their motorcycle helmets are red fire helmets. Yeah,
That's cool.
it really is cool. um, there are different groups that come in. I'd give anything if I could think of the barbecue chain that caters the meal, one of the big meals up there. Tennessee Chaplains Association, all of their chaplains have a trailer. In that trailer is a bathroom and a shower. And they bring these up here and set them up so that, because they're just overwhelming with the amount of people over there, are not what's normal for the facility to handle. And so they've took their money, bought trailers, brought them up there. Now,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, they use them in disasters and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But but still, you got that many people coming up there to do that. Each one of the families has two escorts. Chief Ezel and I were the escorts for this family. And yes, I am leaving the name out because of it is what it
Mhm.
is. But truly is a hard part for them. There was and I'll give you an example. Certain things that mean very small means a lot to them. The son-in-law who had a white shirt on because he was part of the organization at the fire department, had put on a pullover, and when he took the pullover off, he realized that he had fuzz all over his
Mhm.
shirt, and all of a sudden, we were looking for a lint brush or a lint roller or whatever you want to call it, because it was eating him up because he wanted to look his best for his father-in-law and his mother-in-law. And now then, we didn't have one, didn't find one, but I got a note from the National Fire Academy that said that in their go kit, which is what they take and have something for everybody, it may have chapstick in it, it may have Vaseline in it, it will have Band-Aids in it. Anything that they can think of that a family might need while they're there is in that. Now they have lint rollers in there. So they try everything they possibly can to make sure that, and it's all again just fundraisers and stuff like that. You want to
Mhm.
send a donation to National Fallen Firefighters? It's on the campus of the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland. But yeah, it's unreal how much effort is put in here to console that family. And then they do have counseling on scene for them, and a lot of them use it.
I can only imagine. Having had the honor of handing over a flag once already in my time, it's such a unique experience for that family because it is, that closing of a book for them,
Yes, it is.
but it's also a closing of a book for you.
Yes. And nearly every one of those will have something or talk to somebody who will relate back to one of the incidents that you've had in your area. And so again, back to that safety in numbers, knowing other people have had the same thing and done the
Mhm.
same thing and how they've gotten through it, and makes a good safety net.
So, speaking saying that, when you look at your career and then having gone up there and seen those, is there truly any difference when you talk about first responders between career, industrial, volunteer? Is there really any difference other than the paycheck?
That's about it. I mean, and we even you and I have even talked about it before, and have a legal opinion that says that our volunteers are, um, because we do pay, for their,
Their pay incentive, the run incentive?
yeah, they're paying, so they, paid on call and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But we also have them their workers' comp, and by having workers' comp, they're not very well compensated, but they are considered an employee,
yeah,
and we should be able to give them better employee benefits. I mean, I have been in, like I say, my career spans a number of decades, but I have actually taught in a fire station that had a dirt floor and saw them pass the hat to get enough money to put in the gas tank. And now you're talking about needing to buy a good used apparatus, a couple $100,000,
yeah.
if not more. So yeah, it's becoming harder and harder, and without the support from our communities. And again, talking about mental health, if they're not getting the support from their community, it's hard on 'em.
Mhm. I don't know how the sustainability of the fire service is there if we don't start getting, in the totality, the support we need from the communities, but also the government. I mean, our state's a great example. They have a surplus of money, and they tote about giving so much money to law enforcement, which is needed. Law enforcement needs money, but the gap between their money that they're getting every year and us just continues to grow larger and larger.
Well, correct, and that's just like a lot of these small volunteer fire departments out here relied heavily on federal surplus
Mhm.
that they could get through that. Well, that's one of the programs that the state is looking at doing away with. And now that I'm not sure where they're going to get their tankers and stuff like that. And if people are not aware of the federal surplus program, as the military gets through with something, it's always well maintained and well, and usually in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
And so the state was able to buy it at the cost, and then they were able to pass that on to fire departments, and so a lot of it was free. And now then that is talked about being jeopardized and going away, and that's a shame because that's like I said, a lot of them they don't have enough funds to hardly put the gas in it, much less buy it.
While we're trying to buy and fuel our trucks and train our people and keep our people healthy, now we're having to fight every year to add that piece to the puzzle. It's just an ever growing stack of accumulative
Absolutely,
politics we're playing.
absolutely. that's uh, that's absolutely. And I have been to the Capitol during session several different times to testify in favor of bills and against bills and stuff like that. Uh, Luckily, I had a brave chief, Chief Glenn, who would let me go in uniform.
Mhm.
Most of them, because of pressure from the mayors and all of that, will not let their people go in uniform to testify
Yeah.
because they don't want it to come back on their city. Because in the municipal league, I'm getting into politics. I'll just leave that. I'll just leave that alone.
Well, I do want to bridge off that a little bit. So when you look back in your career and all the things that you've had to see or do and go through and the mental hurdles, the things that have stuck with you, some of them are going to be there forever.
Yeah,
At the fire marshals conference, you had two different honors blessed upon you. So you got asked to do things and be a part of some extra things that are very high honors when it comes to what we do and how we try to impact that at the state level and the national level. How does getting that honor help make your career and all the things you've had to suffer and endure and the hardships on your family? When you look at those moments, how much did they make that better? And not necessarily ease the pain that's still there, but make it worth the pain that you've gone through.
I think a lot of that is it is a reassurance that you have done stuff right. And when your peers are telling you that they would like you to be their head of their lobbyist,
I wasn't gonna throw the titles out there, but I'm gonna leave that up to you.
yeah, to head their committee for lobbying and be their spokesperson, that it's truly would have been an honor. I did turn it down. Got a lot going with different things.
Yeah.
I have 5 small grandchildren that I spend nearly every night at a ball game right now. And I am still active in the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association and different things like that. My son is the Area 7 vice president. He's the volunteer fire department we were talking about a while ago,
Mhm.
volunteer there, and EMT. So we've immersed ourselves over the years in that, and truly um, with that servant mentality, people recognize it and say, "Hey, this is a person who can represent us."
Mhm.
And quite frankly, too, I've never played any of the games or the shady side. You be careful when you ask me something; you're probably going to get the answer, whether you like it or not.
That's true.
And that that that's always been one of those things too. I remember years ago seeing a presentation, and the guy said, "Well, if you tell a lie, you got to tell it 9 times, and you have to remember each time how you told it the first time. And if you tell the truth, you can always remember it because it's the same thing. It's actually what you actually did."
Mhm.
So I've always stuck with that. Sometimes it hurts and stings, but uh, it makes it you don't have to get and then realistically, you build a reputation where people know when you say something, you're not just blowing smoke or trying to be politically correct. You're
Yeah.
telling the way it is. And I've had things that I have said that I had to do, and it probably hurt my career more than it helped my career.
But you felt better for having said it.
Yeah, it's always truthful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is one thing. Because I'm a very direct person. Sometimes I have to figure out how to say a little better, but I don't regret the fact that I'm a very direct person, and I
yeah.
always come across as that the person that you're gonna get the truth from me. I just gotta get better about sometimes saying it a little bit smoother. Now, I will admit that part. Sometimes I'm a little rough on the edges with it, but, that's one of those parts of, I'm still young in the service, so so when you look back on your career now and you think about how we manage and how we develop this resiliency that it's kind of a buzzword. I hate using it so much, but it in my head is the most, you know, fitting description of how we're gonna make sure that we get more retention and, these guys have a better work-life balance, whether it's career or volunteer. But when you look back on how you started, 'cause there towards the end, that's when it really started becoming a huge thing. So you kinda had exposure to all of your career windows in that time frame. How was managing that and helping build that initial foundation that we're kind of growing and really launching from today? How was that done, and what was different about each one? Because so many times when I'm at events or I'm talking with folks, they say, "Well, you're just over volunteers." Yeah, we're poorly paid is really what we are, but to the few at large, we're volunteers, so it's different. We're different. We don't do it the same. We don't do it as much or whatever, even though we're super busy. Look at our Facebook.
Right.
Sorry.
Realistically, that has been one of the things that I have tried to promote and show people. Again, we get into catchphrases and buzzwords and stuff, and I've used it in some of the presentations and stuff like that. But fire doesn't care who it burns,
Yeah.
whether you're a paid guy or a volunteer guy. And sometimes we have to step up and show that it is important. I'll give you an idea. Years ago, my turnouts were a jacket that was issued to me that was made out of cotton duck, okay, and a helmet. That was it. You went to the hardware store and bought your own rubber boots, okay,
Well, different
and
than today.
we got into a fire, and 2 of us got SCBAs and went in and put out the fire, and then we got chewed out by the chief
Mhm.
because we had used the SCBAs, and he had at that time had to drive all the way to Conway to get them filled. So we knew right then that there was changes that had to be had and we had to be moved forward. And if you look at that, we all got together. Then we asked the chief to go to the city council and ask for us to get the new modern turnouts. And the modern turnouts were made out of Nomex, which was what the first Apollo astronauts used in their suits. Okay. And the chief stood up and said, the firemen all voted and said they wanted me to come to ask for y'all for new turnouts and sit down. And I said, I'd like to address the council.
Yeah.
And I said, we're all volunteers here who have to go to work the next day. We have families that are depending on us. And we feel that if we're going to be able to protect our citizens in this, then we need proper equipment that will protect us so that we can go back to our families and stuff like that. Council voted unanimously, but someone had to give them the tools for them to make the right decision.
Mhm.
Okay, these guys are doing this free. Okay, they need to go home. We don't need to have to pay for line of duty desks and stuff like that. We need to do that. Well, it's the same thing in this is we have to continue to lobby for and say, we need this, you
Mhm.
know, and it's just like when you brought the sweep program to us, there wasn't any question about
Yeah.
from the administrative fire board that that was something we needed to do. So you've already lobbied, you've already won that one. Now how you
Mhm.
doing on the state level is back to you, chief.
You know, and all the training and mentorship that I've gotten from you, that is one thing I can tell that I'm still trying to piece it together how I'm gonna go to state level, but I know what I have to piece together because you've taught me if I give the why and how this is the smartest choice for them, make them realize this is the best, most
Help
educated.
them.
It's just getting it all put together because when you start talking at the state level, you are talking a lot of lobbyists, a lot of representatives, legislators, and you have other people that have other agendas and other focuses that you have to make sure that you don't take away from that because it is important.
Right.
These other things are important, but this right here, I've got to somehow paint the picture of using a lot of these facts that we're seeing, especially when we're talking, retention and burnout right now. You used to have 10 years and all these, back in your day, it was a 20-year career. People used to go and be a paramedic and it was a career they retired from. Now we're looking 5 years, 7 years, if you're lucky. So it's a huge alarm bell going off,
Hmm.
but I can't make that alarm bell too bright because fire trucks are expensive. I'm trying to figure out how to buy ours. So,
Yes.
and there's only so much money in the pot.
Yes.
So I see the wheels are turning there. And I'm gonna tell you, sometimes that's more stressful than running calls and seeing.
It is.
I mean, because at the end of the day, it is, this scales is the best way in my brain of how I'm looking at it. Because right now I'm trying to balance, but eventually one's gonna have to be picked and take priority. As a lobbyist, I feel bad for them because we're about to start hitting with a lot of stuff, and you know
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
While trying to stop some other stuff.
Absolutely.
So maybe they need a sweet program.
Well, and there are so many avenues, and luckily I was involved in just about all of them at one time.
Yeah.
But there are so many avenues out there that you don't think about. But to give you an idea, um, back to being the political part of it.
Mhm.
Is you run into it. It's just like the Arkansas Fire Code is an adaptation of the International Fire Code.
Yep.
Okay. Why is it an adaptation? It's adapted because we have taken stuff out of it in Arkansas to suit our needs. And
Mhm.
I'm talking our needs is through politics and stuff like that. And I'll just give you one. This one's pretty easy to me. The International Fire Code says that if you have a remote fueling system, someplace that doesn't have an attendant, then you have to have a sprinkler system. Makes sense. You have a
Yeah.
small fire, the sprinkler system holds it in control till our firefighters get there and put it out.
Mhm.
Okay. But we took that out of the fire code from the Arkansas side of it. And now then you can turn on your pumps and leave. And as long as you've got the card reader to read it, they can get gas there. And if they have a fire right there, yeah. Are they working on percentages? I'm sure they are. Oh, it's not going to happen.
Until that one does.
But when it does happen, how many of us will be affected as firefighters and EMTs, and how many people, uh, it just we again, there are so many things that bleed into the other side of it, whether it's the fire EMS side of it, or it's the EMS by itself, or it's in the mental health of all of us, and the police involved in it too.
Mhm.
Um, When I was working patrol, I had 2 or 3 different times where the shift commander said, "Do your EMT skills." So he cut me loose from my police responsibilities to help stabilize patients while the paramedics were on the way.
Mhm.
Prioritizing and figuring out, and it's in everything. It's that old scale, when you're weighing it out over here and trying to figure
Mhm.
out what the balance is tough because if you move one bead from one side to the other, you may tip the whole scale upside
Yep.
down and wreck the whole thing. But yes, I think that, and I think social media has helped, and I think social media has hurt involvement in this sort of stuff. This you can do anything you want to society that we see now has really been somewhat of a detriment to everything, including planting seeds in people's head that are mentally not right.
Mhm.
And so now then we're having to deal with other issues that come into our emergency services and affect us mentally there too.
Yeah, because it's so easy now for someone to get online at a very young age, which I don't agree with, and go down a very interesting path. We'll use that way of just saying it, that before, the parents were able to help develop those good core values. So that way, when they did enter the world and got exposed to everything in the world, they had a solid foundation to make educated,
Right.
wise choices and steer clear of things that were going to be negative to them. Whether they were the same for me or you or not, at least we could maintain some core values and, continue that pathway.
Yeah.
Now, 5, 6, 4 years old, they're on iPads and cell phones, and not that that's a bad thing, but the amount that are unrestricted on those phones is alarming. Because kids have to have something. Especially there is some of that stuff that's good and educational out there that they're using their phones for, but then you get to the other side of it where it's unrestricted and they get full access to everything the world's got to offer. And
And I think some of our thought processes are very hurt because we don't have the time when you didn't have that, then you found something to play with or you made something to play
hmm
with. You went outside. I could see the difference between my older two children and my youngest child. They were spent a lot of time riding bicycles. The third one never learned to ride a bicycle. So I know right now that if there's a bicycle there and I can jump on it, I can probably outrun about 90% of the kids that are under 30 years old. I mean, now if there's a skateboard laying around, I'm probably going to be, hard pressed to stay ahead of it.
hmm
And that's part of that is the change, but we also still have to always come back and be grounded and understand that whether it's the family base and stuff, and quite frankly, with the last 30 years high divorce rate and stuff like that, there's not, but when you're single parenting, when they're, and a lot of the skills that we're learning now, they're asking someone on the internet how to do something, and they just because they tell them something doesn't mean it's the right way or the best way to do it.
hmm
And you know, uh, on the law enforcement side, we were always saying if they doesn't have family,
hmm
then there's a family out there on the street that will be glad to take them.
Yep.
And I'm talking about drugs and guns and
hmm
gang members and stuff like that. Now, there's a family out there for them. And if we don't provide that in our home homes, then they turn to other things that are not good.
You know, the more I look back and we started trying to use our cadets to help develop and, give people that time away from their phone and everything else, it's really interesting how much, negative we get because we don't allow phones when they're doing the cadet stuff because they're there to learn and grow. The cell phone is such an addictive thing. People don't even realize it. And then now we've gotten to the point where, single parents and, some things happen in this world, but, that's how they crush to help balance. So that way they got a free moment. Understandably, you're single parenting, multiple
Yeah.
kids, even one kid, a kid's a lot to handle. You need 5 minutes of just
Hmm.
meditation for your mental health. So it's so many layers on layers. And then you start adding in the complexities of life today with, gas right now is $4 a gallon. I about had a heart attack filling up my truck. You know, it's it's one of these things where it's gonna keep building such chronic pressures on us. What's the boiling point?
It's true, and part of that is that we're handed these images, um, and a lot of the kids try to get to that, and a lot of the young people try to get to that level.
Mhm.
Um, you know, s my parents and my grandparents, um, if you had brown beans and fried potatoes and cornbread, that's a pretty good meal,
Mhm.
you know? Um, then over a period of time now that that's no one knows how to fix that in the younger generation or how to eat it, and the reason for that, it was two things. It was fairly nutritious for you, and I'm not talking about good nutrition. I'm talking about burning calories to be able to do a job.
Yep.
uh, but it was reasonably priced where you could afford it.
Mhm.
Now then, people whoop out a card or something like that, and they go get a meal. And I saw an example of the day where a guy was eating leftovers, and his granddaughter was staying with him because she was in a school in his area,
Mhm.
and she ordered a DoorDash, and it was $20 for a hamburger, and then she's going to wonder how she's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. Then that sticker shock at the end of the month because we just hand it to them, hand them the card, hand them the card, hand them the card, and all of a sudden it accumulates and comes in. Um, my wife, everything we use on the debit card now, she still records in a checkbook. So she knows what the running total is. Does she have to? No. But that's just something that we were ingrained in, is making sure
Mhm.
that we were financially responsible. And again, grinds on you mentally when you realize, first of all, you're trying to stay up with everybody else by doing the same thing they are when you don't have maybe the income they have.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the month, now you've got to figure out what you're going to pay for. And some of these young folks have gotten thousands of dollars in debt and don't realize that they're paying like 24% interest. And then all of a sudden, how do I get out of this? It's mentally eating them, because they're trying to do everything they can, but they were still pulling that card out to get that DoorDash when they could eat beans and taters.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but it's a real retrospect because, we give a poor compensation for what these guys are doing.
Yeah.
But as the service is evolving and the world's getting faster and lithium ion batteries and electric cars and all these things, we're asking for more training and more time and dedication. And those are real things that as a leader I have to just sit and think about is how much time do they have to give me?
Yeah.
In all retrospect, because at the end of the day, if they're worried about paying the light bill, they're not, no offense to their neighbor, but they're not worried about going to help them when they're calling for 911 because they're stressed. They're working 3 jobs trying to get bills paid.
Right.
It's a real retrospect. And when they are volunteering, if it just so happens to be that super acute, super horrible call, well, now they're carrying a full cup, and we just dropped a
Even
huge
more.
amount in that cup.
Correct.
It's not just going to explode, but it's going to be a critical mass index of,
Yeah.
proportions that we just don't, we don't even know where they're going to spiral towards. So it's a huge piece of what keeps me up at night whenever I'm thinking about how to manage the next evolution of our service and why the mental health part is so important because, like our EAP, most people don't realize that part of the reason I went with the Southwest, because I looked at two others that were recommended, is they had so many things built in. If you need to know how to cook a cheap, delicious meal, there is a cookbook section on there and it is hundreds of recipes built in. That's free.
Yeah. There you go.
If you need help managing your checkbook, there is a section on there to teach you how to do that. Because I got taught that when I was young. My parents made sure that I was financially responsible growing up because they didn't, they had their hard times. I'll be honest with my past. My parents had hard times and they didn't want me to have that same moment in life. So they made sure I did. Now I don't still track mine that way, but I have a day every month that I sit down and I look at my finances. And even though I pretty well know what it's going to be, I still would rather verify it. So I spend one day a month making sure of that.
Yep.
It just one less stress for me. But if I can add those tools to my people, that's one less thing I have to stress over that they have that access to if they didn't get taught it young.
Right. Well, and originally part of it was just to give them something to compensate them for the price of the gas they just burnt to get
Hmm.
to the station in their own vehicle, help offset a little bit of the maintenance and upkeep on their vehicle,
Yep.
and to also be able to maybe take their wife out or their spouse or their husband out for something that they could have pleasurable experience themselves. But the ideal was always was to compensate them, like I said, for gas and for their clothing or something that may have been ruined or something like that. And also to help give them a little bit to do something for themselves. And I think again that gets back into your mental health deal. If I can't afford to take my spouse out or my friend or my girlfriend or whatever, if I can't afford to take them out to do something, but yet I'm jumping up and running all the time, like, wait a minute. So, the ideal was to, and again, each one of those has to be their own financial person, but we do compensate a little bit, but it, for what they do for us, it's not near enough.
No, not for what we're asking for, but we do what we can do.
That is the trick right there. We still, same time, have to provide them the facilities, the equipment, and the training, and those are all expensive items too.
Oh boy, are they?
Yeah, that's that balancing act, hey, chief.
That's even more expensive. I don't want to get into trying to balance those kind of conversations. I was on the phone this morning about that. Yeah, that is one thing I will say that though with our community and the buy-in that we have from the communities to be able to have that focus so we can pay the other bills and they understand that is huge. It's to why we don't, I get asked so many times, why isn't Morrilton paid? Well, because right now they don't need to. They still have people showing up, getting there, getting the job done. Will that change in the future? I'm sure for all of us, as the world gets faster and we need more money and things get more expensive, balance is going to come harder and harder to make. But for right now, we are very blessed to be able to make that balance.
Yeah, we have some great people. Their hearts are in the right places. They want to help their neighbor. Um, and I one of the again over a period of time you develop some catchphrases, and I had someone ask me one time, said, "Well, you you got hobbies?" I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I hunt and fish a little bit." But I said, "My real hobby is," I said, saving people's lives and property. And, what? But it's the truth, you know time I could be spend doing another something, hobby or something like that, was dedicated a lot of times to the fire service and or the EMS side of it, and or even to the police side of it, all three of them.
Yeah, you've done
Uh,
all.
During that time, I could have been doing something else, but realistically, where you really hit the wall is that we're saving people's lives and property. What a great calling! What a great service! Not many people can say that.
It is a unique honor that's blessed on us. I was talking to some of our firefighters at a training a few months ago, and I was telling them how unique of an experience it is to be able to walk into a home. They don't know you; they just know the emblem you wear and the service you stand with, and they will throw their newborn child, their
Hmm.
kid, their grandma, whatever. You're a stranger, no different than walking down the street, but because they dialed this fancy number and you're wearing this uniform, you are their savior.
Yep.
That is a blessing that few people really get to experience, and those that of us that have had the experience, you know, I don't I don't take it for granted.
No, absolutely not. No, that trust that's placed in us is truly just insurmountable. How big it is. I
Mhm.
mean, it is unreal. Yeah, you're exactly right. You know, and when you start doing your patient assessment or whatever, and you're telling them this is what you're going to do and this is what they're going to do, and they're sitting there going, okay,
Mhm.
they've put their trust in you, and they know that you're professional. You know what you're going to do, and that's something I'd like to kind of just hit just a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things I see on a regular basis, and I'm going to take some heat from this, I know from
Mhm.
some
That's
other
okay.
people, but that's okay. I'm old enough I can take it. But over the years, we have seen the term volunteer used and paid used.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. On a regular basis.
Mhm.
But I assure you, one of the ones that the paid people like to use is professional. But I assure you that I have seen some very professional volunteers.
Mhm.
So I like to put them into paid and volunteer instead of professional and volunteer,
Oh, 100%.
because the dedication that I've seen on some people and the amount of time they put in to build up their volunteer professionalism is unreal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We have some guys that serve with me right here in this county that I would staff a rig with and go against any city guys around here.
I'm, I'm, yeah.
And that is not my guys that work
Well,
at these
and,
cities.
I've said it before too on that, and getting that in the right frame of mind like that. It's just like when we started this emergency response task force. We wanted them to have specialized training and stuff. And that is what I use. I said, you need to understand that these are going to be the Navy SEALs, the elite firefighting service of our county. And we're going to make you have additional training to get that.
Mhm.
But then when we put that sticker on their helmet that says that they're part of the emergency response team, it is a pride element that they can carry with them forever. They have rose to the challenge. They have exceeded the challenge. They have done that, and they're willing to do more.
Mhm.
And that is a tremendous thing right there. That was one of the things that I saw, and I saw a need in it. And now we know that when we get some of those people on scene, that we can ask them to do whatever skill that we need to do on the fire scene. They're going to do it. And and people don't realize that volunteers, we have different levels. It's like my dad. My dad was a retired truck driver, had million mile certificates and all kinds of stuff without accident. Well, who's the best tanker driver I could come up with? My dad. And
Yeah.
he was good at it, and
Yep.
he didn't mind sitting there with the truck. He had gotten older. He couldn't fight fire anymore. He never wore an air pack in his life,
Mm.
but he could drive a truck. And so he was my tanker operator. We get into that, and that's one of the things that we have a little bit of a problem with is that we continue to say everybody has to have all these classes. Do they? I mean, the ones that are interior firefighter, yeah, I want them to have everything and all that sort of stuff. But we have people who do external services out there that maybe don't need as much of that sort of stuff. If you got a gentleman who, like my dad, who was never going to wear an air pack, he was
Mhm.
never going to go into a building, was going to be the truck driver. Probably emergency vehicle driving would be a really good class for him to take, but I'm not sure he needs interior structural firefighting.
Nope. He ain't gonna do it. So
No,
why make him put the time in?
maybe pumps and some stuff like that.
Yep.
But no, you don't need that. And that's what we get hung up on sometimes. We get cubby hole into one area where everybody has to be here, or everybody has to do that, and we don't need to do that sometimes.
I think oftentimes we cubby ourselves into that, but I want to really touch and spin this back into the how we started this conversation. I think we do that because we're so busy trying to prove to these paid departments, not professional, paid.
Yes,
Because I think you take the professional out of yourself the moment that you sat there and said you're a professional because you earn money doing it.
right.
I think you discredit the service and the people that put the time and effort in. Because isn't it like 80 to 90% of departments are still volunteer?
That's correct.
I mean, and another thing, this is one of those pieces that I'm still very raw working on in my mind, but I'm wondering how many of these conversations I'm having since I started this podcast with these volunteers that are worried about being younger into this and working through and learning how to handle the scenes and the experiences they're going through because they are volunteer. I've never asked, but a lot of the conversations would start off with, "Hey, I'm just a volunteer at here." They always
I'm just
label.
a volunteer. They
Yeah.
label themselves. Yes,
I didn't even think about that piece of that conversation because I was telling you about the one before we got started, but that's how it was. That's how he started it. So how much are these guys doing a disservice to the volunteers that are professionals out here that have passion and care about it just by giving them this weird label that, yes, that's kind of what you're doing, but that doesn't mean it's less than what everybody else is doing out here.
yeah. Again, that's putting you got to get the self esteem back into these guys and give them a pride base where they're proud of what they do. And I think the just in volunteer will go away. But again, we want them to feel like they are doing something. It makes a difference, and it moves the organization and our communities are up.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there's some well, it's just like in our own county right here, we've got a lot of very well regulated, very well equipped, very well trained fire stations and fire
Mhm.
people. And then we've got some of them that are working really hard to get to that level.
Yeah.
And you know, part of it is getting them there. And again, it gets back to sometimes it's about the peer pressure. They're doing really good over here. And to give you an idea about that, we've had a lot of real positive things come into our county as far as our consolidation of the 12 station into one and how we've done that in an emergency task force. And,
Mhm.
we had a lot of good stuff like that. Back to you, how many people have contacted you and said, how'd you do that?
I don't even want to think about
A
the
lot of
number.
them, a lot. And that's what I'm saying. There are people
Yeah.
out there that are hungry to improve the service, and they just need someone to say, "This is the way we did it, or this is how you can do that." And it may not work anywhere else, but then again, it might. And we're very blessed here to have a dedicated sales tax that goes to us. A lot of people out there don't. They don't even have a community that supports them. It's just a bunch of guys that got together and found an Army surplus truck, and
Hmm.
that's the fire department. Are they doing the best they can? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And that's where we're at right now. People are saying, "How did y'all do that?" And there's nothing wrong with us trying to help them in that respect.
There's a pathway for everybody to have some semblance of this, and I only say that because I was in DC earlier this year, and that county that I was in, and all the counties surrounding it, do county based.
Hmm.
They have a county based volunteer division and a paid division,
Hmm.
and it is treated equally, and it works. So county operations can be done. Theirs was more similar to ours. If I was to hire in a dedicated engine staff and still have my volunteers, it's kind of similar to what they were doing. So I'd never been to this county in my life, didn't know it existed, didn't know it was a county-based service. We just naturally trended towards, something they're already doing, and it's working. So, it's there for everybody. It's just that fun part of playing the politics, figuring out how it's gonna work out.
Absolutely.
That fundamental hurdle that you gotta get through, uh, because it has been that is probably the toughest thing in my career I've done so far. I've seen a lot of stuff, done a lot of things that you don't wanna do as a paramedic or you don't wanna see, out in the fire service as well, but I'll tell you, as a leader, managing through the stress of that level of change that fast that we've gone through, some of it on my own discretion of wanting to see some things progress a little quicker than maybe I needed them to, was some of the hardest stress that I've ever had to work through.
Well, and it is, but the also the rank and file, the guys that are out there who are actually the ones pulling the hoses and putting the
Mhm,
water. I mean, and I say that, but then turn right around and we run, and I'm talking about over the whole state. We run 70 to 75% medical.
mhm,
And so now we're putting that on our guys too.
yep,
And it's tremendous to have that response when you're a rural community like we are. Getting someone there just to stop the bleed
yeah,
is saves lives. And so we're doing some really good stuff like that. But it gets into that evolution where we're slowly moving forward and changing, and that's the good thing. I can remember one of my first structure fires where we got there, had a chance to save it, got a good knockdown on it, and run out of the water on the truck. Now, this was a 58 Ford truck, Ford pumper. And if you could get the truck to start, you might not get a slant six, which you've never even seen or heard of. You'll want to look it up now. Chrysler engine that ran the pump. So you had two different engines on the truck. But
hmm,
by that weight, you can only have 300 gallons of water. So we put the fire, knocked it down, had to break the hoses loose and send it to a hydrant to get 300 gallons more on it. We came back, it was pretty well gone. I mean, you have to sit there and wait when your truck's going to get water and the flames are getting higher and you're going, and first thing you know, you lose the whole house. Well, um, back to that improvement, my dad saw that too. And he found over in eastern Arkansas a tanker over there that had 1,000 gallons on it. He bought it and brought it to the city. And that was the first tanker operations we started. Did that really help? Yeah. And then
mhm,
later on, we went to the dump tanks where we could actually send that truck back to well, with water settling on the ground right there for us to utilize while that truck went away. So over a period of time, now what happens there, Ned, and you don't even realize this one, but can you imagine the emotional stress of thinking you got there on time, you knocked the fire down, and now you're going to sit there and watch it burn up, knowing your neighbor's stuff, because this is neighbors. This is you.
I couldn't imagine and wouldn't wanna think about how pissed and how much I would probably be throwing shit at people, screaming, "Where's my water?"
Yeah, that's what I mean.
As a like, not just as a firefighter, but also, as a commander on scene and as a fire I don't know that wouldn't be a knockout fight in the middle of it
Yeah,
because then we'd start arguing, did we hit the right spots with the 300 that we made?
yeah.
I mean, no, the complexity I can we're spoiled today.
Well,
I'll just say
absolutely.
it.
And that was the evolution that I was trying to show you in this 40 something years that I've been involved in county firefighting here. Uh, Even though I was from Opelo, I was still part of the county system with you.
Mhm. Yeah.
But watching the evolution and seeing this move forward from those days when we were in cotton ducks and had 300 gallons of water on the only truck we had has been tremendous, you know. And to see the equipment changes, I mean, man, we were, you know, and probably the last improvement that I've seen was probably thermal imaging cameras. So now that we can get, was, you know, everybody say, well, you know, it flared back up. No, it didn't flare back up. You didn't put it out. Why didn't we
Mhm.
put it out? Because we couldn't see it. Well, now we have thermal imaging cameras and we can see it and we can stop that from having a rekindle. You know, you call it
Mhm.
rekindle if you want to. It's, you didn't get it out. I hate to say it. I'll be the guy that brings the bad news. But realistically, that helps mentally too, is to have the equipment and be able to utilize that frustration of not having to. I mean, I can remember beating the doors off cars with a sledgehammer and a crowbar because no one had tools, you know. I mean, we literally beat the doors off of them to get people
Sounds like a lot more work than I care to do.
out. Oh my. Luckily at that time they didn't have the nader bolts, so it wasn't quite as bad. But yeah,
Still.
I mean, it's unreal, you know. Or needing to get someone out and, you know, can't get them out because you can't get the roof up off of them or whatever,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah, there's some mental anguish that goes on there that by having the proper equipment and the proper training helps alleviate some of that. And I apologize, my sinuses, it's the time of year.
Especially this time of year right now.
Man, I am running nose. I'm sorry. But yeah, that helps with it too. And then also when you can supply your guys and girls with the equipment they need, it shows that you're caring about them too. And that makes a big difference. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had some ideals brought to me that was like, no, no.
My guys and girls are watching, so I'm not gonna say nothing there.
And again, that's that part of it where you have to say no sometimes, knowing
Yeah.
it's going to cause you some heat for a while there. But there's, you know, it may be that we don't have the time to really train for that operation. It may be that we can't afford that operation, or it may be it's just not needed. It's in such a small context that we need to use our funds to buy something that we use on a daily basis.
You know, it all does at the end of the day come back to funding though.
Oh, it does. It does.
Every time I have to say no, and it's very, very rare that I don't find some creative way to make someone's ambitions come true for us. It does end up being money though. When it has to be a no, it's money. Money is the root.
Yeah.
As with everything. You know, whether it's your job or personal life or whatever, money is the root of everything, but
Oh, yeah.
it's if only we all just had an endless supply of it.
No,
Need to go rob that ship that was carrying all that gold leaving Iran the other day. That's what they were launching the missiles at.
is that right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I was reading something on there and I was like, "We're moving gold out?" It's something to do with the I can't remember what it was all about, but they're moving gold. That's why the commander was flying in a helicopter above it and all that stuff. Yeah. It's really interesting read. But not interesting enough for me to memorize it. So yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm. The world we live today. Well, John, I'm not gonna take up too much more of your time. I appreciate you coming in. It's
Glad to
been
do
a
it.
pleasure as usual.
Glad to do it. It helps too to do the multi-generational thing because if you don't know where you came from, it's hard to move forward. Because when you look back over your shoulder, you need to see where you came from and where you're going. And if you've got a good path behind you, usually it works out pretty good. So that's what I envision all along is that we continue to have a steady path forward. Now, are there guidelines and restraints put on us? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I think overall the service here is in pretty good shape and we're trying to move forward and do more stuff. It's just like the mental health and all that sort of stuff. We have things that we don't realize for a while, but if we realize it and then we don't do anything with it, then it becomes our fault.
Mhm.
And so that's where we have to make decisions, and sometimes they're hard decisions. And like you said, sometimes it's just the money. But again, we if we can't fix it, then we need to be able to write in procedures and protocols that says this is how we will do that. And it's just like you worked very hard when we were getting ready for this ISO audit to get all of the mutual aids and stuff like that. Utilization of resources is something that most people don't realize that is a very important thing to have. It's just like being paged to a fire and then being turned back. That's the way it should be. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder hoping we got resources. I want those resources coming or already on the way or on the scene. And by doing that, we make a better outcome and we help our people to feel good about what they do. And that helps with our mental side of it as well as our physical side of it.
Mm,
We all want to feel that we've done something
yep.
that's good. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, no one gets into this for the most part, except for wanting to feel that good and that do that great thing
Yeah.
and make that impact.
Yeah. What's your hobby? And that's why I think that our cadet program has been so successful is because they realize that you can sit around and watch a screen all day long, but to actually get out there and feel like you're making a difference is something here. And it makes you feel good about yourself. And in the end, got a hobby? Yeah, save people's lives and property.
Not many can say that.
Not many can say that.
No.
Come on. We've got places for you.
No, yes, we do. There's a job for everybody.
Used to be a bookkeeper, we got a place for you. Used to be a truck driver, we got a place for
Uh-huh.
you.
Especially bookkeepers and truck drivers. It is interesting the number of people that come to, well, I only do this for a living. Well, that correlates to this.
Mhm.
You know, there is there is a way for us to utilize every avenue because we're still a business. We are still at the end of the day, that's
You're a
the core
business.
of it. You're a business. So every role and responsibility that normal life has, we have. We just usually make someone do 5 of those jobs. Now if you come on board, now we're able to kind of break that out and delineate it into a
Right.
better system. So offload some of that anguish onto the right amount of people.
Very good.
Well, thank y'all. We'll see you on the next one. John, I appreciate your time,
Take care.
sir.
All right, bye.